Sarah's neck of the wood first of all. I think we've got Corangamite if I go a little bit further in. There it is, behaving for me. OK, so this, at the start of the night, had a bigger margin. Let's take a look at what is happening here with the Corangamite vote. So you are seeing a swing against Labor, albeit a bit against the Liberal Party and up for the Independent. A little bit of vote all over the place, but so far you are seeing on the two-party preferred a swing towards the Liberal Party. And again, 3.8%. This isn't something that is safe right now. So this is a seat that could flip. This is one of the few on the board where you would be more concerned if at the moment you're the Labor Party. I'll go as well. I might go to Gorton and just have a look there because this, again, 10% seat for the Labor Party at the start of the night. So I might just go, first of all, to the primary, see what's happening there. A little tick upwards on the matched. And then a big swing there for legalised cannabis. Look, a bit all over there on the primary, but so far, very small amount counted. You are seeing a swing to the Liberal Party. Again, with that small amount of vote counted, not willing to say that's going to be hold. So you are seeing a few more swings so far in Victoria. New South Wales, it's clearly not a happy hunting ground right now. And then we go to Queensland, and this could be the story of the night. If Labor ends up getting and holding on to majority, it could well be Queensland, which was flagged before this election. So let's go to Brisbane, for example. Some of these are going to be really tricky to call through the night because of the three-way nature. Ryan, right now, is Greens versus the LNP. If we have a look at these primary votes, though, right now, look at this. Greens, Labor, then the LNP. So what's going to happen below the line and decide who gets to the final two? Well, who knows? Family first, a little bit there, a little bit for the trumpet of Patriots. So that's just too hard to know, plus what happens with the swing. If we see Labor Green at the end, then we see the Liberal Party preferences, the LNP preferences help Labor win. So that would actually be a Labor gain if it ends up, if Labor can stay in that final two. So that's the seat of Ryan. Brisbane as well is looking really close. So right now you can see it's Greens versus LNP is what it's been called, but that's not necessarily the case because look where the Greens are. Now, if they don't recover from that, that's going to be a Labor Party victory, again, with Greens preferences, and that is a long way, but to be behind on 18.3%. So I might go back and just make sure don't have some sort of key booths out of that because it's the first time I've seen that bigger gap between Labor and the Greens. But on that, that's going to be a Labor Party victory over Trevor Evans, unless, let's see, what other vote is in here? Not much. Family First, One Nation. Look, there's a bit of other vote, but you know, it only just adds up basically to getting Greens over the Labor. No such thing as preferences flowing 100%. So that's another possible Labor gain. So look, right now, I'm not going to quite say it yet. I'm just sort of mulling it over, but I won't. I'll be a bit more circumspect on it. We've got the House, of course, where it's sat, and this is I suppose, what we want to keep looking at. So can the coalition make ground to get even level with Labor and win a net 10 seats? I'm not seeing it almost anywhere. I might just be a little bit cautious and go away and get some, have a glass of water and have a think about it, Kieran. But I think you can tell what I'm feeling the vibe is at the moment.
No, have a cup of tea.
Crunch some more numbers.
Have a cup of tea, crunch the numbers, and we'll be back with Tom Connell. It's gone 8 p.m. here on the East Coast over in WA. The polls are closed. The final votes across the nation have been cast as the counting in WA also commences. We'll continue our rolling coverage here throughout the night till stumps. It's like it's heading one way. I want to check in with the campaign headquarters now. Paul Murray and Sharri Markson at LNP HQ. Paul and Sharri, over to you.
Thanks, Kieran. Well, we're here with the Coalition campaign spokesman, James Patterson. James, let's be upfront with viewers here. Is the disappointment setting in from the Liberal team? And you know, how bad is it looking at this point? How strong are the swings towards Labor?
Sure, it's way too early. Our internal Liberal Party research shows there's a really significant difference between how people vote based on whether they vote early or vote on the day. In some seats, it's 8 to 10% lift in the Liberal Party primary vote in early voting compared to on-the-day voting. So if that's right, if that's confirmed, then we really need to wait until much later in the night where much more of the vote is counted before we can make any drastic conclusions.
So we're at the moment looking at what seems to be the trend towards Labor, but we're going off 8, 10, 12% that's counted. Where's the number of count coming in where we start to see that pre-poll?
I think you really have to wait till you get to 30 to 40% of the vote counted before you can be sure if there's a reasonable margin. And obviously, if it's a close margin, you're going to have to wait till much later because you're also going to need postal votes to be counted as well, which also favour the coalition. Now, early voting is about half the vote this time. It's the highest ever been, and there seems to be a really big behavioural difference. We saw that in the Queensland state election. We had panels, calling the election for Stephen Miles almost early in the night because they didn't anticipate such a big difference with pre-polls.
So you think some of the calls that are being made tonight are too early?
Well, I wouldn't be calling a marginal seat based on less than 10% of the vote counted, not a single pre-poll being reported, certainly, and then you've got postals as well. So I really would be much more cautious and waiting till later in the night. We might get there, but we're not there yet.
So that asterisk, but on current count, not looking good for Peter Dutton in the seat of Dickson. Again, I'm sure the same logic's going to be, let's wait till 30. But at some point in time, the margin is not able to be pared back. What's the internal? And again, I get it. We're talking about the boss.
Yeah.
We're talking about the leader of the party. We're talking about
a lot of resources spent by Labor and the Teals and others. Simon Holmes, of course.
They've come after Peter a couple of times since he first won the seat in 2001, but this has been the most ferocious attempt to target him. Not just the Labor Party, obviously, and the unions, as we traditionally have, but as you say, Climate 200 and the Teals have come after him this time as well. Plus, tens of millions of dollars of national media advertising, which were primarily personally targeting Peter. So that is going to have an effect, including in his own seat, but it's way too early to say. And Peter's held off challenges before, held on. He's an outstanding marginal seat member, and so I'm not counting that by any means yet.
Well, James, looking at it this way, are there any bright spots at the moment for the coalition? Which seats can you name that are looking good?
Look, Victoria looks better than the rest of the country, which is what you would expect it to be. But again, this is just the on-the-day boost. It's not the early votes reporting yet. Early data coming out of Wannon looked very good to me. I mean, the Teals were claiming that was basically as a victory a few weeks ago. They spent an extraordinary amount of money down there, mostly money that they raised in Sydney and Melbourne and spent in regional Victoria. Monash, the data looked good as well. Again, a top Teal target. So we're waiting for more data, but Victoria looks better so far.
Can I ask a strategy question? Which is, I was in Western Australia last weekend. All of the Labor ads were about the Libs were going to do this to Western Australian hospitals, a very local TV market messaging. I didn't see that from the Libs. I saw national ads, not specific ads. Now, this is exactly what happened in 2022. What is the strategy of one message, one ad everywhere, as opposed to the Victoria ad, the Queensland ad? And I know that there's some elements of mentioning the Victorian government, but the 30-second spots on TV, they're the same everywhere around the country.
Yeah, look, national TV advertising is one thing, but then you also got to drill down on the YouTube ads and on the Facebook and Instagram ads and the video on demand, which a lot of people are watching now, and that is hyper-localised and hyper-targeted. We have run the most bespoke advertising campaign across all forums than we've ever run before. The tiniest variations for regional subtleties and branding have been picked up, and I think you'll see that in the much richer data picture when you look at all the ads. Of course, national TV advertising does try to be consistent. We've got a national message we're trying to sell, and that was a hell of an air war. We think Labor's probably outspent us on national TV advertising. We had a good fundraising in this campaign, but incumbent governments are very hard to compete with in that respect.
All right, James Paterson, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, mate.
Sherry,
and Kieran,
Paul, thank you.
Back to you now.
No,
we'll
appreciate
update you.
We'll talk to you soon. Let's go live to Chris and Laura at Labor HQ. It must be a little bit excited there now. Chris and Laura, what's the mood like?
Yeah, they are. Every time they see Dickson flash up on the screen, there are big cheers in this room because it does look like Peter Dutton is in danger of losing that marginal seat, the most marginal seat in Queensland. I quickly want to go just to point you, Tom, and the panel to a few seats where different battles are on. Cowper, the Nationals MP, the fight of his life on the mid-north coast. Pat Conahan, look, only 15%, less than 15% of the vote counted. Pat Conahan is behind, but he was behind last time as well, and he still came home to win that seat. So whilst it's not looking great on the current count, they're still pretty confident about the seat of Cowper. I want to go to the seat of Griffith now. This is a Labor Greens grudge match. Max Chandler Mather in the seat of Griffith, once held by Kevin Rudd. On the face of it, this looks like a safe Green seat. A margin of 10.5% it's held by Max Chandler Mather, but he is down and Labor is up. Labor are now confident of getting that seat back in the red. The seat of Goldstein. Now, this is Tim Wilson wanting to win that back from the Teal Independent in Zoe Daniels. I've just got some news from the booths there as well. On the two-party preferred, it doesn't look great on the early count, but there's a few things at play. They're moving definitely the Liberals' way. A booth in particular has just come in. That's had a swing of 7.8% to the Liberal Party. Another booth has given Tim Wilson and the Liberals a swing of 11.5%. That was Brighton North. You'd expect that. That swung big time to Zoe Daniels last time, but it looks like it has swung back to Tim Wilson. So they're still confident of getting that seat, and that might be one of the few in the Liberal column. If I could just point you to one more seat as well, that is the seat of Bennelong. This is a notionally Liberal seat after the redistribution, but we're seeing really good signs there for Jerome Laxall. He was a local mayor. He had to actually get a swing to him to win this seat, but look at that. It's looking good for him in a big way. He has been campaigning really hard, and they've had 18 booths come in now, and they're up on primary on 17 of those 18 booths. So that's a little bit of news from
Laura,
the booths, and the scrutiny is there.
The Liberals weren't too impressed with their candidate, some of them, when it came to Bennelong. I heard internally. It should be a seat, of course, they'll be looking
Not
to win.
Not just Bennelong. I mean, we could talk about this later, but the selection of candidates hasn't been great, and it's been late.
Yeah,
particularly in New South Wales.
The candidate should be locked away a long way ago. But I just want to have a look at the national vote here, because I think in many ways this is the real story of this election, because we had, of course, such a low primary vote for the major parties at the last election, a record low for Labor, and yet they managed to still form government. At the moment, you're seeing there between the major parties, you're looking at below 65% primary vote. I mean, that is catastrophic. Now, we expect that to pick up again as those pre-poll numbers come in, but this will be the first election where we get the major parties not commanding 2/3 of the vote between them. This is a historic change in the way we conduct politics in this country. It's more challenging for the coalition because, of course, Labor already has that symbiotic relationship with the Greens, so they can cobble together governments and share power. But the way the coalition vote, the right of centre vote, is fractured over recent decades creates real problems for them. And that brings me to the other sort of post-mortem that, of course, you've started to do there on the panel. But this really was a horrible campaign for the coalition. It's not just about individual instances and policies. It's about the whole approach now. They seem to be stuck in an old-fashioned 1980s-style campaign. They need to move with the times, and they need to advocate. You can't just have the leader popping up with the focus group lines on the evening news as you did in the days before. You've got to advocate, and they really needed to push their key policies like nuclear versus the renewables shambles and some fiscal responsibility. But they ran a mile from those debates.
Chris, you've got to have something to advocate for, and you've got to have key policies to advocate in the first place.
Well,
so
the energy one is historic, and yet they ran away from it.
They may have run away from it, but Labor put it front and centre. They didn't put it front and centre in terms of the viability of it. They put it front and centre of the cost.
Exactly.
And whether that is a scare campaign or not, I think what the Liberal Party, the coalition, need to do is have a look at the result tonight, not stand up tonight and say, look, we've lost the election, but we're going to still push ahead with nuclear. Surely
no.
You've got to say we're going to review everything. Not tonight, Chris.
You can't become Labor light. You've got to learn to advocate your policies, call out the lies, and actually win an argument.
You can't be Labor light.
Not promise what Labor promises.
But you've got to look where the electorate is. And if you can't drag them to where you are, you might have to somewhat meet them where they are in many points. I mean,
you have to look at where the electorate is, then you have to look at Labor's vote as well. And
absolutely.
This is my point, is the major parties are losing them in droves.
I mean, there's a lot of, disloyal people within the Liberal Party at the moment, already picking over the entrails of Peter Dutton. They did that late this afternoon. SMH is a story about a factional meeting that was already scheduled for tomorrow. I mean, the count's not in. It's not looking great for Peter Dutton, I would say, but a lot of the criticism during the campaign I felt wasn't personally directed at him. It was at the whole campaign and perhaps how it was structured. Of course, he has a big part of it, but I will say this. If Stephen Miles can stay on as Labor leader after that loss in Queensland, surely Peter Dutton has a small chance of doing the same.
You need to get about 65 seats. We'll throw it back to the panel.
You, Chris, Laura, appreciate it. Yeah, and that's the big question if he does have a seat. We might have a John Howard situation, although John Howard was Prime Minister, the Liberal leader losing their seat at an election.
I got told today an opposition leader's never lost their seat. I don't know if that's true or not. Look, I just want to take you through how big this is. And, you know, the pre-polls can come back, but is Albo about to win a landslide, all right? So he's ahead at the moment in Dixon, Bonner, Deakin, Banks, Petrie, Leichhardt, Menzies, Ford, Longman. Longman will probably come back as 51-49, and Hughes. They're all Liberal seats. He's ahead in like 10 of them at the moment. Now, it is early. A lot of them will come back, but I don't think there's any doubt that Anthony Albanese's got an increased majority, not just a majority. What do you think, Murray?
It's certainly shaping up that way.
You happy to call it?
I wouldn't call it yet.
Come on.
I think he's increasing his majority.
Yeah, it's certainly looking that way. The Coalition have got to do extraordinarily well on pre-poll to not end up in that spot.
Let's hear from Joel. In your the Hunter, in your area, you've been watching closely Patterson. What are you hearing?
Well, I don't regret calling it, and I'm feeling more confident about my call as every minute goes by. Both Hunter and Patterson are looking very good. I don't really have the numbers, but I've got 3% primary swing to Labor, but One Nation's coming second. I don't think that matters. Yeah, so I've got it because the Nats votes will go to One Nation, but the tone of the text message I have is a positive one. That's also true of Patterson. Now,
Joel, I've got to interrupt. We've got to go to Tom Connell, Chief Election Analyst, with a declaration. Tom.
Yep. I've seen enough of the numbers right now, and for several reasons. I'll walk you through it quickly to make sure you know why we're making this call. Let's start off, first of all, in Tasmania. This is the first seat we're actually going to flip tonight. We're not flipping it from the Liberal Party to the Labor Party. You can see here, this was a seat held before this by a pretty thin margin, 1.4%, 30% of primary counted. That is enough. This is basically on the day. We know that pre-poll and postal can bring things back. They can't bring things back that much. It just doesn't happen. So two-party preferred right now, a swing of 9%, definite win. There you go. My computer system's done it for me. Good to see it's up and running. So there's a flip already from Labor to the Liberal Party. There's a problem in the macro as well when you look at this overall situation. Let's go to some of the nationwide and statewide figures here as we tell you why this contest is effectively over. 5.5% swing against the Coalition so far. So overall, this can pick up. We will see this pick up in on the day in postals, but the problem is the swing's clearly going against them and building bigger. So again, can that correct itself somewhat? Yes, but look at the difference in those two-party preferred. So even if they're correcting to 52-48, that's clearly not something the Coalition can win from. And we're looking at, as well, at our pendulum at the start of the night. This was the question. How far could it swing? Could it swing all the way over to blue or be a toss-up? At the moment, it's going that way. So will we see a correction from these numbers? Almost certainly when we're talking about that pre-poll and postal. But it's not going to be enough to get it back all the way over there. The other issue as well for the Coalition is when we're stepping this out, it's not just about what's happening, it's where it's happening as well. So we saw at the start of the night, Victoria was always going to be a key part of their polling. Let's look at that first of all. These are the seats, of course, that Peter Dutton needed to win. So these are the margins. Chisholm, Aston, Bruce, McEwen. Aston was seen as almost a certainty. As we go right now, we're actually seeing Bruce, McEwen, Chisholm and Aston is even Labor leading. Now, these sorts of margins in particular, McEwen, Aston, Goldstein, maybe they can be brought back, but they're behind right now and they're going to be tough. New South Wales is another story altogether. Look at the targets, and in fact, they're the margins right now. If we look at where the targets were at the start of the night, a swing to hold, you know, Gilmore, look at these tiny margins, -0.1, 2.6, 2.2. As we go now and we see where these margins are, most of these are well beyond what we're going to see when we see that correction. So no joy in New South Wales, and Queensland, of course, is going the other way. We're not seeing the Liberal Party pick these up, and they're going to lose others at the moment as well. So therefore, at this stage, we're not sure what flavour it might be. There's positivity within Labor, it could be a majority, but Anthony Albanese will again be Prime Minister of Australia.
Labor wins, Sky News declares it, Tom Connell has called it, and this is a major moment for Labor and for Anthony Albanese, the first Prime Minister since 2004 to serve a full term and be re-elected, the first Labor Prime Minister since Bob Hawke to serve a full term and be re-elected. This is a huge moment for him, for your party. How does it feel?
It feels great. I mean, obviously you're in elections to win them so that you can deliver on the things that you believe in and that the community wants to see done. There's obviously, Barnaby rightly pointed to the fact that it was going to be difficult for the coalition to win. It would be involved knocking off a first-term government for the first time in a long time. But I don't think we should understate the significance of this win, and it's clear that we will. As you say, long time since we've had a Prime Minister be re-elected, even longer since a Labor Prime Minister has been re-elected. And if you look back over the last 12, 18 months, most incumbent governments around the world have been tossed out. UK, US, Germany, Queensland, Northern Territory. So to have an incumbent government hold government is a pretty extraordinary achievement.
He's only the third Labor leader to do it after Whitlam and Hawke, 2 election victories. John Curtin never did it, Ben Chifley never did it, Paul Keating never did it.
This is, as I say, it's his place in history.
And potentially with an increased majority.
Yeah. Which is unusual, Joel, because normally, as Peter Credlin and I were discussing earlier, first-term governments normally take a haircut at their first election. This has flipped that.
Yeah, even Hawke in 1984, having won a big victory in 83, took a big hit in 1984, only 18 months later. So, yeah, it is typical. And this is an outstanding result for Anthony Albanese. There's no doubt about that. I just want to clarify something on Patterson. I'm still very confident about Patterson, but I've seen some more numbers that I'm not going to call that yet. But I think we'll win Patterson. But the other extraordinary thing happening here is that it's very clear now that Labor's going to have a majority, but there's still going to be some surprises out there, and something really weird is happening, and it goes to the diminishing vote of the major parties. So the AEC is suspending the 2-party preferred count in a number of seats, certainly in Bean, certainly in Bendigo, and I'm told possibly Farrer, Franklin and Richmond. And what this means is, for those watching at home, the AEC has to make a decision before the night about who will come first and second, and the computer is set. And what's happening in these seats is the wrong person is coming second. And typically it looks like they are these community independents or TILs, whatever they might be. So they've had to suspend the count, the 2-party preferred count in those seats. And what that suggests to me is, well, you've got one Liberal Party seat there, and 1, 2, 3, 4 possible Labor seats that could go awry because of the rise of independence. Okay. I'm not calling that, but it's a possibility.
It's a good point to mention. So when we're talking about this majority, Chris Hillman, for Labor, it might not be as big as some might be expecting at this point because of that anomaly that Joel talks about. But then also the thing that you spoke about earlier, the primary vote question. Labor is now their primary vote.
Their primary vote. This is what Anthony Albanese had to do. He had to turn around. That's been a trend now that we've seen for the last 3 elections. The Labor Party, they got down to 33% of the primary vote, catastrophically low. He had to start to lift that. But the real catastrophe is what's happened to the Coalition's primary vote, which is now sitting on about 30%. Now, that is horrific. So what we will see tonight is that most likely, and again, things change dramatically. People tell me, wait until all of these pre-poll votes come in. OK, let's see what happens. But the distance is set now so vast, they can't make it up. You could see the Liberal Party losing seats from the position that they're in, which leaves them not 1 or 2 elections from government. What you'll see in the coalition is an existential threat. Where does this party go from here? It has lost its heartland seats in Victoria, which were now they've turned teal. They're not coming back, right? It wants to make a play for the outer suburbs of Sydney and Brisbane. Well, they're not picking those up. So where does this party go? And the thing that you can predict after this election is this is a party that essentially will tear itself apart while it tries to work out how it articulates itself to appeal to enough people in Australia to be able to form a government in future. So I think the big story tonight is the Labor Party win. The big question for the opposition is where to from here?
And potentially some future leaders of the Liberal Party.
Well, let's hear from Barnaby. We've got a few members of the opposition here. A former Deputy Prime Minister, talk to us.
Look, I think that when we all turned up here tonight, we don't say it on television because we've got to keep you watching, and that's how we pay for the ads. But we all knew what was going to happen. We all knew the Labor Party were going to win.
But not by this margin.
Not by that's correct, Kieran, not by this much. But I'll make and I think anybody predicting, as I said at the start, in the middle and now towards the end, another Scullin government was not going to happen. That was never going to happen. People who were talking about that didn't know anything about politics or hadn't been around for as long as you and I, Kieran, started off about the same time. And I'll make another prediction. Never, ever say the dog is out of the fight. I remember sitting down with this lady once and she'd absolutely smashed and she was sitting down, she was moanful, and it was horrid. And her name was Anna Palaszczuk. The next election, she won and she stayed there. So, you know, be really, really careful about making...
I would agree with that.
We had 4 leaders in 3 years after Howard. And we were on the bones of our backside, right? And we picked ourselves up and took a first-term government to a hung parliament scenario. So
you lost on a primary vote of 42%.
Yeah, but I'm making the point. Let's not count the party out. The National Party haven't lost sight of who they are and who votes for them and what they stand for. I mean, all credit to the National Party. The Liberal Party has gone through contortions between the Howard and the Abbotts and the Turnbulls over here and the Morrison, who was owned by everybody. The party leadership has had issues in the last 15 years and the National Party hasn't. And look at the 2 electoral results.
Who do you see as the best option to lead the Liberal Party from here?
Whoa.
Taylor or Hastie?
Whoa, you can't...
I think
Dutton might lose his seat. I can't see him hanging on as leader after this result.
You've got issues with geography there too. I think it's very tough to be a leader from WA. I'm not discounting him. I mean, that's a decision for the party room. Got, you know, no say in that one. But you've got to think of those logistics when you're talking about taking the fight up to a Prime Minister who looks like he's increased his majority. I mean, I'll start where I started at the front of the night. To hold office was a win, a minority outcome, but to win a majority and perhaps even increase that majority, that is a victory.
When you've demolished
them, it's a huge
Josh
victory.
Frydenberg, you have to start thinking outside the square and think about Frydenberg trying to get it back into Parliament. Someone like that to rebuild.
I don't necessarily think Josh is the answer. If Josh was the answer, he would have had the ticket to run this time, potentially. Or if Josh was the answer, he wouldn't have the legacy he does out of COVID. I mean, he does have baggage in Victoria.
I think it might have been just smart
with some
of
of
Josh
the
not to run this time.
I might just...
Let's hear from Sarah Henderson. We should hear from the one current Liberal on the...
Well, clearly there are lessons to be learned, but I think it is far too early to be discussing any changes in our leadership. We've got a long way to run in terms of where the number of seats that we win or perhaps lose, where we know the final result.
But it's looking pretty bad at the moment, isn't it?
It's looking terrible. It's looking pretty challenging. There's no doubt about that. I'm not going to just cut into the chase. But there is some green shoots. I like to stay positive. And I want to say that in Solomon and the Northern Territory, there's looks like a very strong swing to the Country Liberals' Lisa Bayliss. Yep. Two-party preferred, she is leading Luke Gosling, Labor member, by 7.1%. She's run a very strong campaign on law and order. Of course, Leah Finocchiaro is very, very popular. She's run a very, very strong agenda aligned with the Northern Territory government. And, of course, cost of living is also a very big issue in the NT. But I was actually there on the day.
One glimmer of hope, though.
One glimmer of hope. But when you don't listen to your community, like Labor did not listen on cheaper, more frequent flights to the Northern Territory, you get punished. And I think that was a classic example of where we acted, Labor didn't, and now Lisa Bayliss is reaping the rewards.
The other thing too is there's one seat in the Northern Territory. You look at Queensland now. There is a march against the Liberal Party up there at the moment. So Bonner, Leichhardt, Griffith, Petrie, Brisbane, maybe Dixon, Ford, Longman, like the
leaders from Queensland.
Yeah, and that was the last bastion.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an asset. Look, for Tom Connell to call at 8.19 is extraordinary. Let's face it. And Kieran and I were talking before. We were having trouble getting Liberal guests on, senior Liberals.
Well, Susan Lee hasn't gone on any media tonight from Albany, not one, the deputy leader.
Michael Sukkar, I think, was reluctant. I don't know. I think that's accurate. Others were reluctant, and perhaps they saw this coming.
I think that's a real question for the Liberal Party if they can't get their leading lights to do interviews on a night like this. I mean, you know, if this turns out to be as bad a result as it looks for the Liberal Party, it's a responsibility of leaders to front up and take responsibility and explain themselves.
And Murray, I think that's very unfair, and that will happen. But when you are in the middle of a fight of your life, you're not going to preempt anything or be arrogant. And frankly, we've seen the Prime Minister now already talking about his third term. Australians don't like arrogance.
He's not talking about
We are not going to be arrogant. They are in the bunker, of course, watching every vote come in, and you will see the likes of Michael and Susan Lee speak very strongly.
Can I have 1 second just to clarify? I was talking about all those seats which have apparently had their two-party preferred count suspended. I think I named Richmond. It's academic in the case of Richmond because Justine Elliott, the Labor candidate, is getting preferences from both the Greens and the Nats, so it won't matter. The other seats, I'm not sure. It is a worry in Bean.
OK.
Sure.
Yeah, well, so there are these little anomalies where Labor might win a majority, but you could have another, you know, cross benches. That crossbench grows even larger. I want to bring in Richo. You called it...
Shout out to Richo.
Yeah, shout out to Richo. You always get it right, Richo, you do. I've got to say, and you got it right again this time.
Yeah, I did, but I didn't find that terribly difficult. I think I always thought Albo was going to win, and as the count progressed, you could just see it happening. And you could see whenever you flashed to Liberal Party rooms, there was that sort of downbeat look that so many of the people there had on their faces. And I can understand why. This is a big win for Albo and a huge disappointment for the Liberals, because they've got to ask themselves, where do we go now? We've tried Dutton. What else have we got? Well, not much. Because if Angus Taylor's the answer, it's a stupid question.
As you were talking, we could see on the other side of the screen, you spoke about the Liberal Party celebration being, you know, moping around and not much joy. Well, it's the opposite at the party that you spent so much time working for and committed to. And we've got these pictures on the screen right now, and it is a party.
I'd love to be with them. It looks like they're going to have a pretty big night.
Where do you put Albanese now, before I get to Tom Connell again for the latest numbers, where do you put Anthony Albanese in the order of the great Labor leaders? Because you have to speak in those terms now, having won 2 elections, served a full term and won again. The first time since Hawke someone's done that. From a Labor side,
he joins the pantheon of great Labor leaders. No doubt about that. I mean, this is a fabulous effort from Anthony, just tremendous. And I couldn't be happier for him. He works hard. He's a terrific bloke. You can't find anyone who doesn't like him in the Labor Party. He's a very popular figure. And he's there for as long as he wants to be. And you can't say that about Labor leaders normally.
No, that's a good point. It's a very good point. Having had such an emphatic win, it removes any question as to whether or not there'd be pressure on him after 18 months or 2 years. Richo, thanks. We'll catch up with you soon. Let's bring in Tom Connell. Tom?
Yeah, Kieran, at the moment, very little good news for the Liberal Party. I'm going to take a couple more off the board right now. Let's go to Hunter in the New South Wales, first of all. You can see there are a few target seats. This one looks like it's acting a bit funny. I'll try my luck. Here it is, Robertson. That's good to know. So the primary at the moment in Robertson, you can see the story here. 2.2% was the Labor margin beforehand. 10% swing against on 40%. Now from here, from the 40% mark, this is when we wait for the big pre-poll and postal. So this will get better, but not enough. Not to counter that sort of margin. You cannot make 10.65% up on those sort of figures. So that's going to be a Labor Party hold in Robertson. So another hold. Now, this isn't a gain, of course. This is just Labor holding when we're talking about their majority. And actually, let's have a look at Hunter. That's just... that's interesting. OK, I want to look at how much we've got in here. 28.7% in Hunter. Remember, a 4.8% margin. You're seeing One Nation possibly come in here and finish second over the Nationals. Now, the thought was, how much would the One Nation preferences flow to the Nationals? Right now, it's going to be the other way around. Look, I suspect with on the day in pre-poll, this improves in particular for the Nats and they finish second, but they're way off. They're no chance really at that 0.9%. No, I'm willing to say that will be a hold. There you go. My computer system's done it for me. Good to see it's working away there. So there's another couple of holds. I'm going to go, though, so then you see all that and you sort of say, OK, well, why don't just call the Labor majority when you're seeing that? I'll actually give you even more news that would give Labor a bit of encouragement. Look around these areas here. So Aston, 4.6% is the Labor lead. Deakin, 4.2% is the Labor lead. Labor held that seat at Aston, but this was seen as the most certain to go, if you like, to the Liberal Party. Labor's still leading there, and Menzies, Labor's leading there as well. These margins, when we're talking pre-poll and postal, this particular year, normally it's not gettable. I'm not saying these come back into the blue column, but they can. I want to see how pre-poll's flowing before I'm willing to say they stay there, especially Menzies at 2.2%. The other thing with Aston is, because Labor don't run as big a campaign, you don't have as many people handing out how to vote, that is more likely to come back quickly, like we saw Deakin last time. So Aston and Menzies in particular, but look, they're all a fight, and that's all good news for Labor. What's trickier for Labor? Let's have a look. I saw some interesting numbers coming in Bendigo before. Well, they're not very interesting numbers, are they? I'll try my luck in here. You never know what you'll get, will you? So 25.1% counted. Big swing against Lisa Chesters. We've got the Nats running when essentially they didn't last time, and that's why the Liberal votes dropped. So in other words, this is messy. Let's just hit the button and find out what that all means as a two-party preferred basis. Well, what this means is we've got the wrong call coming in. So the AEC's decided this would be Labor and the Liberal Party. Let's see if we have some estimated. No, we don't. All right, I'll see if we can get that. But on those numbers and what I'm being told from Labor on the primary vote at the moment, they're definitely in trouble here. 11.2% is the margin, but they still see themselves as in trouble. So that will be one to watch. So this is the potential downside. Will Labor lose seats, and how can they make them up? So they have obviously flipped a seat so far already. The other one they're in a bit of trouble with at the moment is the Northern Territory. So it's actually the seat of Solomon. I'll try my luck. No, I thought that might not work. Solomon just taking in Darwin and surround. So takes a little bit of manual use. 2.2% is the margin. So this comes from a pretty big margin before the election, 8.4%. Look at the swing against Luke Gosling, 6%. And we've got a client-backed independent running at 12%. That helps, but clearly that's taken away from the primary of Labor and of Greens as well. So this is a bit of a messy contest, and two-party preferred at the moment. Look, these are volatile, smaller electorates, pre-poll, postal. This is way too close to call on those particular numbers. In other words, Solomon is a potential loss right now for Labor. I didn't see where Lingiari was at right now. That's a notoriously difficult seat to figure out. Look, it's only got 9% counted. It's a decent Labor lead, but it's just a very volatile, a lot of remote Indigenous communities. So we won't be making predictions on that right now. And then, of course, they've got their seats in WA. No real numbers in there just yet. So everything is pointing towards a likely Labor majority right now. But there are figures there and seats there that can come back the other way. So we were able to sort of shed the caution, if you like, Kieran, to say Labor's going to win this election. I just want to make sure on some of these majority calls. We saw it in New South Wales. It seemed certain they'd get a majority, and then it was walked back. So that's what we're trying to avoid here. I don't like sitting on the fence, but
no, you don't.
A few more coming in, and we'll see how we go.
No, you're cautious, but wise in that caution. We'll let you go and dig a bit deeper. Murray Watts here, the Cabinet Minister, and we've just got to talk about Dickson because we've been talking about it throughout the night. This is Peter Dutton's own seat, and he's in a battle just to hold that, Murray. What are your scrutinies telling you?
We're now thinking it's leaning Labor, so we're not calling it, but we do think that it is leaning our way, and that's mainly because one of the big pre-poll booths has now come in with I think it's about a 4% swing on the primary to us and about an 8% swing on the primary against Peter Dutton. So that combined with the results that we've seen come in from today's booths gives us some degree of confidence about Dickson to move it to a lean. I can't remember whether Tom's already said this, but we're calling Bennelong and Robertson as definitely ours. And there's a number of other seats that are leaning our way as well, but things are looking quite promising in Dickson.
Let's go.
Murray, and just not Murray, as he was talking, our numbers were coming in. Labor's claiming Bonner and it's claiming Bass in Tasmania.
Bonner and Bass, OK. This is Andrew Bolt joins us now. He joins our panel. My colleague Andrew, this is a rout, almost, you wouldn't say existential, but the coalition has got such a rebuild from this point.
Oh, absolutely. Like if Peter Dutton does lose in Dickson, they've got a leadership crisis because there is no person that you would naturally say that man is a leader or that woman is a leader. They can lead them out. You know, they have a vision. They've got some... Angus Taylor obviously is in front running. And while he did do very well against Jim Chalmers in their first debate, perhaps a tie in the second, he's going to get a lot of blame for the economic policies, which were a dog's breakfast, really. I mean, no clear cut through on what they wanted. Fancy a Liberal Party going to the election promising higher taxes than Labor. I mean, seriously, that is a brand issue there. So I don't know whether it was his fault, don't know whether it was Peter Dutton's fault, but things like that means that he will have an extremely rocky start. Plus, he's got presentation issues too. He always looks so uncertain against Jim Chalmers' great certainty, even when he's selling us any, rubbish. But the other issue here is, don't forget, we're now wondering about whether Labor will have a minority government or majority government. It'll be a Labor government. But in a sense, that is a distinction without much, a difference without much distinction, or the other way around. You think in the Senate, Labor still will need to deal with the Greens and still will need to deal with left-leaning independents. So we've still got that sort of paralysis there. You'll have also a shell-shocked Liberal Party. And Labor has gone to this election, don't forget, not with a plan to get Australians richer, the economy richer, bigger, stronger and all that. It's been a handout policy, really. How's it going to pay for it? It had no plan to retire to do anything about 10 years of deficit. So it's got real problems. It's committed to an energy system that will not work in the end. That's going to get more and more critical over the next 3 years, a worsening financial situation without even taking into consideration any potential external shocks. So, the Labor Party's actually won without a plan for government. And it's got now that bloc in the Senate that will really feel, that they'll be really geeing for more and more of the same.
Andrew, you've made the point regularly about the turbulence of Trump, how this is playing out. What's your read on how the backdrop of the Trump tariffs, the tariff war, the hit on people's super, the uncertainty, where do you see that in terms of the mix of this result tonight?
Well, very important for two reasons. One is, I was hearing from people, coming in to vote just today, they were mentioning the Trump factor. The polls show the Trump factor. Murray and the rest of the Labor Party, they kept hammering the Trump factor. For a reason, it's showing up in the polls. It showed up in a Redbridge poll as the most important factor in deciding which party to vote for, vote against, actually. That was ominous. Part of it was, with all the shocks that Australians have gone through, the pandemic, the inflation, the war, all that kind of stuff, they weren't in the mood for more change. They could see a Trump breaking furniture, yelling at the Ukrainian president at a press conference. They didn't want that. They thought, Dutton, you're more like that. Fair enough? No, I don't think so. But that's what they thought. Now, it's interesting to draw a contrast here. Nigel Farage in Britain, the Reform leader, was actually much closer to Trump, obviously, than Peter Dutton. And he had a huge win. But it wasn't because he was close to Trump. It was because Elon Musk, Trump's voice, kept telling him, you got to quit, you're hopeless, you're no good, resign, resign. And so he had a battle with the Trump team and showed like he was his own man. And I don't think Peter Dutton ever did what I kept saying he should do, pick a fight with Donald Trump to prove that you are your own man. He never did that, and the label stuck, and it also made him more cautious in fighting for his own values. He backed off all those things I talked about last time, all the culture war issues and the battles and the voice and all that he stopped doing for fear of seeming too Trump-like. And you see the result.
Andrew Bolt, just stay there if you can. I'd love to keep you as part of our discussion with the rest of the panel. I want to go to Alice Springs now, and the marginal seat of Lingiari, the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, Jacinta Price, joins us. Senator Nampa Jimpa Price, thank you for your time. You heard what Andrew Bolt said there. Your party didn't embrace those cultural issues more effectively enough. You didn't define yourself effectively enough. What do you say to that criticism, and where did it go wrong in your view?
Look, I think, that we could have gone harder. We absolutely could have gone harder. We could have gone harder also on calling out the Prime Minister and his lies, because apparently all you have to do is lie to the Australian people. And that's an effective enough campaign to maintain government. I mean, it was a big ask also to be able to unseat a Prime Minister after his first term. Obviously hasn't been done in quite some time, but there's a lot that we're going to have to consider going forward and regrouping as the coalition in terms of the approach that we take in 3 years' time, and considering where we went wrong this time around.
It's Andrew Clennell. During the campaign, you said at a rally, "Make Australia great again," and then said you couldn't remember it. Was it an issue, do you think, as it seems to have been, that the coalition didn't do enough to say we will actually oppose Donald Trump, not be Donald Trump?
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't necessarily think... I think, obviously, Labor took that those 4 words and ran with it, absolutely, and made an issue out of it. And I think perhaps we could have been stronger in terms of what we were offering the Australian people, perhaps brought out some of our policies earlier as well and got that message across. I think that was important also for Australians to understand exactly what it is we were offering. I think that was important.
And Senator Nampijinpa Price, where to from here? What do you think in terms of the leadership? Where does your party, the coalition, need to go? Who should be the leader of the party if Peter Dutton loses his own seat?
Yeah, look, I mean, they're all things that we have to consider going forward that will come out, and the next few days is going to have to be quite, thinking about all those issues. If we lose Peter as a leader, obviously that's one an area that the Liberals need to determine who they are going to choose in terms of who's going to be their leader. Obviously everything has to be considered next going forward. I will always continue to fight hard and reflect the values of Australia. I will continue to call out division in this country, separatism. My concern is now that the Albanese government's going to go absolutely harder with that agenda, infantilising Indigenous Australians and treating us all like victims and treating us differently to the rest of the country. And we don't need more of that, and certainly the referendum result showed that. And we don't need a deceitful Prime Minister, but unfortunately that's now what we've got going forward. And my concern is for the state of the country under 3 more years of Labor.
Senator Nampijinpa Price, thank you. And we're back to our panel now, and we're joined by Andrew Bolt there. You heard what Senator Price said, Andrew, and the rest of the panel here, that she agrees with Andrew Bolt's assessment that they needed to go harder on those cultural issues and other points of differentiation with Labor.
Well, she also said that they should have done policy earlier, which I wholeheartedly agree with, and Peter Credlin's made the point tonight. You need a bit of time to sell it. But look, I can tell you, I was told by a Labor MP in a marginal seat in March, who's increased their majority tonight, that he didn't have to mention Peter Dutton on the doors. Yeah. People were mentioning Dutton to him. Peter Dutton was not liked. When I went to Brisbane, so many women, even men, every door. I said, Anthony Albanese or Peter Dutton, we don't like Peter Dutton. It's just one of those unfortunate things. And in an interview with me, Peter Dutton said, we'll have a fight with Donald Trump. And perhaps there should have been more of that, because the whole Doge shadow ministry that Jacinta Price was put in, some of his policies. Originally, I just think the people in the coalition thought Trump won. And it's a good thing for us, right? Because it shows people are going more conservative. But then Trump screwed the rest of the world, including Australia. I was at a function the other night where I was talking to a merchant banker and a CEO I'd never met before. They bagged Donald Trump for 20 minutes in front of me because of what he's doing to the world's economy.
I think what happened here in Australia is people brought across a lot of the Trump momentum and policies, mistaking populism for conservatism, and they're very, very different things. And conservatives like me have had a beef with Trump on many issues, and you speak out against Trump, and there is an element inside the Liberal Party fraternity that fire up at that.
Yeah, right.
I distinguish Trump from the Conservative agenda. There are things that, yes, like the Doge agenda, but what happened is when Trump started to turn into a negative, my side got spooked, dropped Doge, dropped a whole lot of other things, when we should never be against wanting fiscal prudence in budgets. We shouldn't be ever against trying to cut down waste.
Didn't you have to separate? Wasn't that smart in one sense because you had to separate yourself from Trump, right?
Yeah,
when he was so unpopular,
you can walk and choose gum.
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
look
right.
exactly. Andrew made the point. If you look at that result over in the UK, and then a catastrophic outcome for Labor, and Reform winning a seat that they were not anticipating winning. First past the post, yes, it's different. But you can do both.
Kieran, I just think that if I'm sitting in Western Australia at the moment and I'm Andrew Hastie, who may have some designs on leadership in the future, and I've got a 1.2% margin, and across the board, across Australia, even in Victoria, the primary vote has fallen for the coalition. And so you're sitting on that kind of margin there now. You wouldn't be thinking about whether or not you're going to be leader. You'd be thinking about whether or not you're going to be in Parliament and might join. So this could be a decapitation.
There'd be another big name, a decapitation effect of this result. But there's another one that Tom Connell is about to call, and it's not a small individual that we're talking about. Tom, to you.
Kieran, the seat of Dickson. It's held by Peter Dutton, of course. It's in Queensland. We've seen earlier on the night this has been swinging. And now have a look at the information we've got here. Now, I want to go through this carefully. It's always a big call when you look at a leader's seat. 9% right now is the margin to Labor. How is that happening? We've got 33% of the primary counted, and we can see here there's a swing against Peter Dutton of 7.89%, a swing to Ali France of 2.54. We've got an independent picking up vote as well. How that's playing out right now, two-party preferred, is a huge 10% swing to the ALP. So what happens on pre-poll and postal? Sometimes it can bring things back a lot. It doesn't bring things back this much. And here's the other factor. If you're just sort of sitting on the fence a little bit and going, maybe wait for a little bit more information, we do have a big pre-poll booth in Marumba Downs, Dickson. So we go into this pre-poll. This is not yet added to the two-candidate preferred, but look how it's going. Look how it's behaving. The same way. 8.3% swing against Peter Dutton. This is not a different pre-poll booth. It's 7,000 votes. So in other words, pre-poll, and this is an area that's described as relatively neutral. In other words, pre-poll is not going to change this scenario. So we are going to see, let's get back onto the relevant area because I'm in the booths at the moment. So they're the pre-poll booths there right now. Is it going to save me? No, it's not. All right, I'll just get back into it. The manual way, if this will behave for me. So the seat of Dickson, I mean, the Labor Party's gone after it several times. They ran a big campaign here. We saw as well Anthony Albanese visit the seat. Let's see what the computer says, but we are now going to see, with 23% count, this is going to be a win for Ali France. So the seat of Dickson has fallen. Still on the trail as well in Queensland. I don't think we've actually called this one out here just yet. I'm not sure what's doing the system. Leichhardt at 6.3% right now. So we can see the primary again. What's happening to this primary vote? 9% against Jeremy Neal, taking over from Warren Entsch. Two-party preferred in this seat at the moment. You can see a swing of 9.7%. It's a probable win at this stage for Matt Smith. We're also seeing action in South Australia. So these were always two seats in play in South Australia we're going to look at. Boothby and Sturt, of course. One held before by Labor, and that's Boothby, 10.6%. So look at this. Again, the story here is how big the swing is. 5.4% against Nicole Flint. Labor already held it by 3.3%. So two-party preferred. It's relatively early on the count, but that's already a hold. You don't make that much up when you're going to the rest of the vote. So that's a hold. And then crucially as well for Labor, another gain. So the seat here of Sturt, let's get in there. You can see the margin is 7%. The swing so far, 25% counted. This is a good amount of vote. Nearly 10% swing against James Stephens. Again, we will see that figure change for the night. I keep saying that. Maybe it gets to 5 or 6, but currently it's not going to be enough. 7% is the margin. It's a win for the Labor Party, so that's another flipped seat. So at this point, you say, surely there's a majority. We're only calling seats going one way, and we are on the cusp of that. We have to assume, though, Kieran, we have to assume, to be certain about this, that there could still be WA losses. We don't know how they've voted. There was a huge vote for the Labor Party last time, and that could correct. What we do have as well is some other seats that are a bit of a worry for Labor. One of them is Bean. So Canberra, we got interesting finally in the lower house. You can see the swing against David Smith, the independent Jesse Price here running. Now, look, we've got Liberal Party vote that's going to help and go against Labor. Look how close that is right now. There's no swing because we haven't seen this contest before. It's too early. I think David Smith would feel OK, but how big was the campaign that was run? So clearly that's a potential loss when you look at that. And then Bendigo as well. This is the one we looked at where the primary is going to be all over the shop, but 11% is the margin. Big swing against Lisa Chesters. The Nationals entering the contest. The Greens will help Labor. We're going to see the Liberal help the Nats. So what happens then? One Nation as well. This is going to be really messy and hard to figure out. But right now, even though it's a small lead for Labor, it's just too early. We want to see how some of the preferences flow there again. So they have some weaknesses, and I'll go to a couple more, just so you know why I'm saying it's not yet a majority, even though we think it's very close to calling a majority right now. And we'll go to Melbourne, in fact. Let's get into this, the city centre. The seat of Wills. Look at it right now. There's Melbourne. For now, Wills is green, 2.2%. We've been keeping a close eye on this. Samantha Ratnam, the former state leader there. How is this playing out? How is she winning this contest? At the moment, small swing against, small swing for her. But then, look, Socialist Alliance picking up 5%. You can imagine how they'd sort of preference. Down on the Liberal vote. And then as well, Legalised Cannabis Party will help out the Greens as well. So right now, that two-party preferred, again, that's too close. We'll actually see, in all likelihood, on the day in postals could help back and help Peter Khalil. They help Labor against the Greens. They help Liberal against Labor. They sort of do different things. So this is definitely not called, but you can see here for the prospect for them losing. Obviously, you've got Bullwinkle, and we looked at Solomon before. So it's very hard to see how it's anything other than a majority for now. But we're going to see corrections. We've started to see the pre-poll. I think the most ominous thing is on some of the pre-poll in so far, Kieran, there are not big corrections. And if that happens, this could be a growing majority through the night.
Tom Connell, thank you very much. And we should not bury the lead. Peter Dutton's lost his seat. There he goes.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable, Tom. Thank you very much for that.
It's believable.
It is believable because it's happened.
Well, it's never happened before.
No, but there were reasons that we had a chance of winning Dixon. I know no one believed it.
It's always been.
No one believed it.
I know you guys kept telling me I didn't believe you.
Let's have our side talk about our seats. It's always been a highly marginal seat, one of the most marginal in Australia. It's been incredibly tough. And Peter, if this is the end of it, has served his nation with absolute distinction over a long period of time in the most senior of portfolios for which the nation is a better place by reason of his service. And looking at it like he...
But normally, let me just say
wasn't
this, Barnaby,
I'm
not arguing with... No one's arguing with that.
In Dixon.
He's been a wonderful contributor to our country for many years. But he's the leader of the party. He's lost his seat. This is extraordinary for an opposition leader,
you mentioned Scullin. It's only happened to Scullin and Howard as Prime Minister. It's never happened as opposition leader.
Well, John Howard obviously lost the election, lost his seat.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to go back too far. And John Howard was actually the Prime Minister and probably one of and goes down in the sort of architecture of Australian greats. There's no doubt about that.
Sure.
So let's not over-egg this in the sort of the hype of tonight. Let's look at it in a sort of a more
I don't think it's
balanced way.
over-egging it, Barnaby.
It's
a catastrophe. Nationally now, the coalition vote has dipped below 30%. That is a catastrophe. And it could be that your seat numbers dip below 50.
Yes.
Come back from there.
I'm just
and at the moment,
about,
where do you begin to analyse an election result like this? Because Anthony Albanese in a first term, we keep talking about historic things, it was a very low primary vote, but he's increased the Labor Party's primary vote.
There's got to be
I'll tell you where I start, by not dumping on them tonight.
I'm just saying it's a catastrophe.
We're journalists, so we can. There's got to be recriminations here. And someone has referred to me as the freshwater disaster, their polling company. And Peter Dutton was telling people that if the polls were wrong, which said he could win up to 10 seats, which was published in The Australian, then the first thing that would happen on Monday was the pollsters would get fired. Well, guess what? He got fired. Now, the freshwater poll apparently told Peter Dutton he was winning that seat by 5% 2 weeks ago.
So can I just say, if Peter does go, that will be an absolute tragedy for the Liberal Party. He's been an incredible Member of Parliament. He has served our nation in multiple different capacities at the highest levels. So this is a real shock if he does go, and it's looking that way. But one thing that I do want to say to all Liberal Party members and to everyone who has supported the Liberal Party and the National Party, that we will rebuild. Now, we are going to go about that task the same way that we did in 2022, with a sense of maturity, with a sense of strong honesty, and step by step.
Who do you want to be leader?
I'm not going to be making any comments about the leadership, other than to say that we will go through this step by step. I mean, we knew we had a massive mountain to climb, Andrew. This has not happened in nearly 100 years, so we knew the chances.
But you've made no progress on the
backwards. I'm not understating.
You're back at base camp.
I'm not understating that, Kieran. It looks like we have gone backwards. That is a shock. But we have to have a really hard and honest look at what we need to do to rebuild.